The enormous alien ship appeared out of nowhere at the very edge of our solar system. It was unlike anything humans had ever seen before. The ship, called Eternal Harmony, looked like a giant crystal floating in space, catching and reflecting the light from distant stars. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Inside the ship, Ambassador Veltar prepared to make contact with Earth. Veltar looked nothing like a human. The alien had multiple arms that moved like tentacles and skin that changed colors depending on mood. But despite looking so different, Veltar seemed excited about meeting humanity for the first time. The ambassador turned on a special device that could translate any language in the galaxy. The message that came through was clear and hopeful. Hello, people of Earth. We are the Hegemony Council. We rule over 12,000 peaceful worlds across the galaxy. Your people have become smart enough with technology that we want to invite you to join our big family of civilized planets. Back on Earth, the message caused complete chaos. Every government, every news station, every person with a phone was talking about it. This was it. First contact with aliens, and they seemed friendly. In Seoul, South Korea, Dr. Kim Jisoo was chosen to lead Earth's response team. She was a brilliant scientist who had spent her whole life studying space and dreaming of this moment. Working beside her was General Park Min-ho, a tough military man who had seen many battles but never anything like this. The excitement in their command center was incredible. Scientists, diplomats, and military officers from around the world had gathered. Everyone was smiling, shaking hands, and talking about how this would change everything. Finally, humans would not be alone in the universe. Dr. Kim Jisoo worked day and night with her team to prepare everything the aliens wanted to see. They gathered information about human technology, our art, our music, our achievements in science and space travel. They also prepared cultural information showing how humans lived, worked, and played together. But the aliens also wanted to see human history, everything, the good parts and the bad parts. Ambassador Veltar began scanning through the data that Earth had sent. At first, the aliens seemed impressed. Human technology was advancing quickly. Human art and music were creative and beautiful, but then Veltar started looking at human history, and everything changed. The aliens saw thousands of years of human wars. Big wars, small wars. Wars fought with sticks and stones. Wars fought with advanced weapons. Veltar saw humans competing against each other in sports, in business, in everything. The aliens saw how humans often chose to work alone instead of always working together as a group. Most shocking of all, Veltar discovered that humans actually celebrated individual achievement. People who did something special or different were praised and rewarded. This was completely opposite to how the hegemony worked. As Veltar continued reading, the aliens' tentacles began twitching and changing color. The ambassador's excitement turned into something else, something that looked a lot like fear and disgust. Dr. Kim Jisoo noticed the change immediately. She had been watching the aliens' reactions carefully, and she could see that something was going wrong. The friendly conversation was turning cold. General Park Min-ho sensed trouble too. His military instincts told him that the aliens were no longer happy with what they were seeing, but there was nothing they could do now. Earth had already shared everything honestly. Ambassador Veltar suddenly stopped reviewing the data. The alien looked up at the communication screen where Dr. Kim Jisoo and her team were waiting hopefully for a response. This information requires much more evaluation, Veltar announced. The alien's voice had changed completely. It was no longer warm and welcoming. It was cold and formal. Before Dr. Kim Jisoo could ask any questions or explain anything about human culture, the transmission ended. The screen went black. The command center in Seoul fell completely silent. Everyone stared at the empty screen, trying to understand what had just happened. The most important moment in human history had just taken a very dark turn. For 3 long days, the entire world held its breath. Every news channel showed the same image, the massive alien ship hanging silently at the edge of our solar system. No one knew what the aliens were thinking. No one knew what would happen next. Dr. Kim Jisoo barely slept during those 3 days. She kept checking her communications equipment, hoping for any sign from the aliens. Maybe they just needed more time to understand humanity. Maybe they had questions. Maybe everything would still work out fine. General Park Minho wasn't as hopeful. He had seen the look in Ambassador Veltar's eyes when the transmission ended. That wasn't the look of someone who was impressed. That was the look of someone who had seen something they didn't like. On the third day, every communication device on Earth suddenly activated at the same time. Television screens, radios, phones, computers, everything carried the same signal. Ambassador Veltar's face appeared once again, but this time the alien looked completely different, cold, distant, unfriendly. After careful consideration of all available data, Veltar began, humanity has been classified as incompatible with galactic civilization. The words hit like a physical blow. In the command center in Seoul, people gasped. Some covered their mouths in shock, others just stared at the screen in disbelief. But Veltar wasn't finished. Your species demonstrates excessive aggression, unpredictable behavior patterns, and dangerous individualistic tendencies. These characteristics make you unsuitable for membership in our peaceful alliance. Lee Hyun, Earth's most experienced diplomat, stepped forward quickly. He had spent his entire career solving problems through conversation and negotiation. Surely he could fix this somehow. Please, Ambassador Veltar, Lee Hyun said desperately, his voice shaking slightly. We understand your concerns. Humanity can change. We can learn to be more peaceful. We can work together better. Just give us a chance to prove ourselves. Ambassador Veltar's tentacles twitched, and the alien's skin turned a darker color. The decision is final. There will be no negotiation, there will be no second chances. What came next was even worse than anyone had imagined. This solar system is now under permanent quarantine, Veltar announced. Sentinel stations will be positioned around your system to enforce a complete blockade. No human vessel may leave Earth's solar system. No galactic citizen may enter. Your species will remain isolated until you achieve acceptable conformity levels. The words conformity levels hung in the air like a curse. Dr. Kim Ji-soo felt her heart sink. The aliens weren't just rejecting humanity's request to join their civilization. They were imprisoning the entire human race. How long will this quarantine last? Lee Hyun asked quickly, trying to get any information he could. But Ambassador Veltar had already ended the transmission. The screen went black once again, leaving Earth in stunned silence. Within hours, the alien ship began moving. But instead of leaving, it started deploying something. 6 large metallic objects separated from the main vessel. These objects were clearly not natural. They were machines built for a specific purpose. The 6 Sentinel stations took positions around the outer edge of the solar system, creating a perfect barrier. Each station was the size of a small moon and bristled with technology that humans couldn't even begin to understand. Then, without any warning or goodbye, the eternal harmony simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next moment it was gone, as if it had never existed at all. General Park Minho stood in front of the tactical display screen, staring at the 6 red dots that now surrounded their solar system. Each dot represented a Sentinel station, a guardian keeping humanity trapped in their own home. Conformity levels, he muttered quietly, shaking his head. What kind of civilization builds a galaxy-spanning empire and then gets scared of people who think differently? Dr. Kim Ji-soo joined him at the display. The kind that values control more than freedom, she said sadly. The dream of joining galactic civilization was over. Now humanity faced a new reality. They were prisoners in their own solar system, cut off from the rest of the universe until they could somehow prove they were worthy of freedom. 5 years had passed since the aliens locked humanity inside their own solar system. Those 5 years had been the hardest in human history. Many people had given up hope completely. Some cities had riots. Some countries had fallen into chaos. Depression and despair spread across the world like a disease. But deep beneath the sand dunes of the Gobi Desert, something different was happening. In a secret underground facility that didn't appear on any map, a small group of the world's smartest people had been working non-stop. They refused to give up. They refused to accept that humanity would be prisoners forever. Dr. Kim Ji-soo had changed a lot in 5 years. The hopeful scientist who had first welcomed the aliens was now harder, more determined. She had spent every single day studying the alien technology, looking for weaknesses, searching for any way to break free from the quarantine. Working beside her was a team of brilliant minds from every country on Earth. Engineers from Japan worked, next to programmers from Brazil. Military strategists from Russia shared ideas with physicists from India. The alien quarantine had done something the aliens probably didn't expect. It had united humanity like never before. Commander Han Soo-young was one of the newest members of the team. She had spent months watching the Sentinel stations through powerful telescopes and studying their behavior patterns. What she discovered gave everyone their first real hope in years. The Sentinel stations follow the same patrol routes every single day, Han Soo-young explained to the group, pointing at a holographic display showing the alien machines. They move in perfect circles around our solar system. Their sensors scan for approaching ships in exactly the same way each time. She highlighted areas on the display where the alien sensors seemed to focus their attention. They're looking for ships that follow normal space travel rules, ships that fly in straight lines, ships that follow standard approach patterns, ships that behave exactly like every other civilization in the galaxy probably behaves. General Park Min-ho, who now led this secret project, studied the information carefully. His hair had turned grey during the 5 years of quarantine, but his determination had only grown stronger. So they're expecting us to act like every other species they've met, Park Min-ho said slowly. They're expecting us to be predictable. Han Soo-young nodded. Exactly. Their whole scanning system is designed to catch ships that follow galactics. Rules and regulations. Then we don't give them conventional, Park Min-ho said with the first real smile anyone had seen from him in months. Across the room, Dr. Choi Woo-bin looked up from his workstation, where he had been designing something. That looked more like modern art than a spaceship. His eyes were bright with excitement. The human ships are finally ready, Choi Woo-bin announced. But I need to be clear about something. These ships aren't trying to copy alien technology. We can't build ships as advanced as theirs, and we're not trying to. Dr. Kim Ji-soo walked over to see his designs. The ships on his computer screen looked nothing like the sleek, symmetrical alien vessel they had seen 5 years ago. These human ships looked rough, uneven, almost thrown together. What exactly are we building then? Ji-soo asked. Choi Woo-bin's smile grew wider. We're building ships designed to exploit something the hegemony clearly doesn't understand about humans. Which is what? Human unpredictability. These vessels can adapt to any situation. They can change their shape, their function, their entire purpose in the middle of a mission. We're building ships that can improvise and survive using methods that no galactic civilization would ever consider. He led the team to the main hangar, where the first prototype was waiting. The ship looked like it had been built by someone who had never seen a proper spaceship before. Parts of it were clearly taken from old fighter jets. Other sections looked like they came from submarines. Some pieces appeared to be construction equipment that had been welded onto the hull. The ship was completely asymmetrical. Nothing matched. It looked like it had been put together by a group of creative children, using spare parts from a junkyard. But that was exactly the point. This ship doesn't carry weapons, Choi Woo-bin explained proudly. Instead, it carries tools. Lots and lots of tools. Tools that can become anything we need them to be. Cutting tools that can become repair tools. Communication equipment that can become jamming devices. Everything on this ship can be used in ways the original designers never intended. Dr. Kim Ji-soo walked around the strange vessel, beginning to understand what they had created. It's not trying to be the best ship in the galaxy. No, Park Min-ho said, joining the conversation. It's trying to be the most human ship in the galaxy. The human ship Defiant Spirit had successfully slipped past 3 Sentinel stations using a method that no alien would ever think of. It pretended to be space junk. The crew had actually damaged their own ship on purpose, making it tumble and spin like a broken piece of debris floating through space. Now, as they approached Hegemony Outpost Keith 7, Captain Yoon Ji-hye gave an order that would have horrified any normal space pilot. "All right, everyone, prepare for collision," she announced calmly to her crew. "Captain, did you say collision?" asked Lieutenant Kim Dae-ho, the ship's engineer. "You heard correctly. We're going to ram directly into their waste disposal port." The crew had trained for this moment, but it still felt completely insane. Every rule of space travel said you should request permission to dock, follow proper approach procedures, and never ever crash into another vessel on purpose. But humans had never been very good at following rules. The defiant Spirit slammed into the alien outpost with a loud crash that echoed through both vessels. Instead of bouncing off, the human ship's specially designed hull grabbed onto the station's outer surface like a giant magnet. Within seconds, the two ships were locked together whether the aliens wanted it or not. Inside the alien outpost station, Commander Zeflon felt the impact and immediately rushed to his control center. Zeflon looked like a tall, thin creature with purple skin and 4 arms. Like most aliens in the hegemony, he had spent his entire life following strict rules and procedures. "Status report," Zeflon demanded from his crew. "Sir," an unknown vessel has attached itself to waste disposal port 7, reported his assistant, sounding just as confused as his commander. Zeflon stared at his screens, trying to understand what he was seeing. "What do you mean, attached itself?" "The ship appears to have deliberately collided with our station and is now stuck to us, sir." This had never happened before in the thousands of years of galactic civilization. Ships didn't just crash into space stations. There were procedures for everything. There were rules. There were protocols. "Are they attacking us?" Zeflon asked. "No. Sir, they're not firing any weapons. They're not making any demands. They're just there." Before Zeflon could figure out what to do next, the humans made the situation even more confusing. They began cutting through the station's hull with some kind of tool, creating their own airlock. "Sir, they're boarding us," his assistant reported. Zeflon grabbed his communication device, ready to call for military backup. But then something happened that stopped him completely. The humans walked through the hole they had cut, and instead of acting like invaders, they started helping with routine maintenance work. Captain Yoon Ji-hye, a small but confident woman, spotted some alien crew members struggling with a broken power coupling. She walked over with a friendly smile and pulled out a multi-tool that looked like it had been designed by someone who couldn't decide what they wanted it to do. "That looks like it's giving you trouble," she said cheerfully, beginning to fix. The problem with practiced ease. The alien workers stood there with their mouths open, completely unable to process what was happening. Station Commander Zeflon finally found his voice and approached the human captain. "Excuse me," he said, trying to sound official and commanding. "You cannot be here. This is a violation of 17 different galactic protocols, including unauthorized boarding, destruction of station property, and failure to request proper docking permissions." Captain Yoon looked up from the power coupling she had just repaired and gave him the brightest, most innocent smile he had ever seen. "Oh, sorry about that," she said, as if she had accidentally stepped on his foot instead of crashed a spaceship into his station. "We're pretty new to this whole galactic civilization thing. Mind if we help with those power couplings over there? They look really inefficient." Zeflon blinked all 4 of his eyes. "You must leave immediately." "We'd absolutely love to," Captain Yoon replied, still smiling, "but our ship is kind of permanently stuck to your station now. The collision caused some structural bonding that's going to take a while to fix. Don't worry, though. We're very helpful guests." She gestured to her crew, who were now spread throughout the station, cheerfully assisting with various tasks that the alien workers had been struggling with for months. "Besides," she added, "when was the last time someone cleaned your waste? Disposal systems? They're running at about 60% efficiency." For the first time in galactic history, a hegemony official had absolutely no idea what to do next. There was no protocol for helpful invaders. There was no procedure for friendly ship crashes. There was no rulebook for dealing with people who broke every rule while being impossibly polite about it. Zeflon stood there, watching humans fix his station better than his own crew ever had, and realized that everything he thought he knew about the universe had just changed forever. Word about the strange human invasion of Hegemony Outpost Keth 7 spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days, every alien communication network was buzzing with confused reports about humans who crashed into space stations and then started doing maintenance work. But the story of Captain Yoon Ji-hye and her crew wasn't just entertainment news. It was inspiration. Back on Earth, Dr. Kim Ji-soo received the transmission with a mixture of pride and amazement. "It actually worked," she said to General Park Min-ho. "They made it past the Sentinel stations." "More importantly," Park Min-ho replied, "they proved that our strategy works. The aliens have no idea how to deal with unpredictable behavior. Within weeks, more human ships began escaping from Earth's solar system. Each ship used a different method that would have seemed completely insane to any normal spacefaring civilization. The ship Wandering Star disguised itself as a broken communication satellite and drifted past the Sentinel stations while playing old Earth radio broadcasts. The ship Stubborn Mule actually surrendered to a hegemony patrol, allowed itself to be captured, and then started teaching the alien guards how to play card games while secretly studying their technology. But the most successful escape was pulled off by Captain Lee Ji-won and her crew aboard the Persistent Hope. They approached Mining Platform Beta 9 and immediately broadcast a surrender message. "Attention Beta 9, Captain Lee announced. "We are humans from the quarantined Earth system. We have violated galactic law by leaving our solar system. We are turning ourselves in and request to be imprisoned on your facility." The mining platform's administrator was so confused by this voluntary surrender that he actually let them dock. Once aboard, the human crew cheerfully accepted their imprisonment and then proceeded to completely revolutionize the asteroid mining operation. Within a month, the platform was processing minerals at 3 times its normal efficiency. At Hegemony Station Vel Prime, one of the most important administrative centers in the galaxy, Administrator Korith was dealing with his own human problem. "Sir, we need to discuss the human situation," his aide, a nervous creature with 6 legs, said during their daily briefing. "What about them?" Korith asked, though he already knew the answer would be something that made no sense. "They're helping." "Ah, sir." Korith rubbed his forehead with 2 of his 4 hands. "Explain." "The humans have completely repaired our environmental systems. The air is cleaner than it's been in decades. They've also improved our food processors so that meals actually taste good now. And somehow, they've made our security systems more efficient while making them less intrusive. And what do they want in return? That's the problem, sir. They don't want anything. They refuse to leave, but they haven't stolen anything, haven't made any demands, and haven't asked for payment. They just keep helping." This was the same story coming from dozens of hegemony installations across the galaxy. Humans were showing up uninvited, refusing to follow proper procedures, and then making everything work better than it ever had before. The situation was so unprecedented that it reached the highest levels of galactic government. Council member Thexvor, one of the most senior officials in the hegemony, called an emergency meeting. "We have a problem," Thexvor announced to the assembled council. "The humans are not following any known behavioral patterns. Every species we've encountered in the past 1,000 years has either tried to fight us, negotiate with us, or submit to us. The humans are doing none of these things." "What are they doing?" asked another council member. "They're ignoring our authority completely while being impossibly helpful. How do we respond to an invasion force that brings gifts and asks for nothing in return?" But the real shock came from an unexpected source. Deep space monitoring stations detected something that had never happened before in recorded galactic history. "Sir," a technician reported, "we're receiving broadcasts from the Kythera system. The Kythera system had been under quarantine for over 200 years. The species there had been isolated for developing music that the hegemony couldn't classify and regulate. They're broadcasting on human communication frequencies," the technician continued. "And they're sharing technological innovations with other quarantine systems." Thexvor felt something he had never experienced before. Genuine fear. Show me. The broadcasts were incredible. The Kythera were sharing advanced agricultural techniques with quarantined worlds. Other isolated species were contributing their own innovations. For the first time in millennia, quarantined civilizations were working together, sharing knowledge and ignoring hegemony authority. And at the center of it all were the humans, somehow coordinating this unprecedented act of galactic disobedience. "Sir," the technician said quietly, We're detecting similar broadcasts from 17 other quarantine systems. They're all communicating with each other now. For the first time in the hegemony's long history, they faced organized rebellion from multiple species simultaneously. And it had all started with humans who crashed into space stations and offered to help with the dishes. The secret gathering was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Hidden deep in an asteroid field between star systems, representatives from 17 different quarantined worlds had come together for the first time in centuries. The meeting was only possible because of human communication technology that the hegemony couldn't detect or block. Dr. Kim Jisoo stood at the center of the makeshift assembly hall, looking out at faces and forms that were completely alien to each other, yet united by a common experience. Some delegates attended in person. Others appeared as holograms broadcast from their imprisoned worlds. "For too long we believed what they told us," Dr. Kim Jisoo began, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd and to millions more listening on quarantined worlds throughout the galaxy. "We believed we were quarantined to protect Galactic's peace. We believed we were too dangerous, too violent, too chaotic to be part of their civilized society." She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering the truth that would change everything. But that was all a lie. They didn't quarantine us to protect galactic peace. They quarantined us because diversity threatens their control. Every single species here was isolated for the same reason. "We think differently than they want us to." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. These were species that had spent decades or centuries believing they were somehow flawed or inferior. Now they were learning that their greatest strengths had been seen as threats. Representative Klax of the Morthan civilization slowly stood up. Klax looked like a large lizard walking upright, with beautiful scales that changed color based on emotion. Right now, those scales were showing deep blue, the color of sadness mixed with anger. "Our crime," Klax said in a voice that sounded like music, "was developing artistic expression that couldn't be categorized. We created music that didn't fit into their established genres. We painted pictures that their computers couldn't analyze and classify. For this, we were declared incompatible with galactic civilization." From across the assembly, Speaker Neith of the Corvani raised one of her 6 arms. The Corvani looked like tall, elegant insects with gossamer wings, but their intelligence and wisdom were legendary among the quarantined species. "Our supposed crime was even simpler," Neith said, her voice carrying a slight buzzing quality. "We refused to abandon our tribal governance structure. The hegemony demanded that we adopt their centralized government system, but our people work better in small independent communities that cooperate with each other. When we said no, they declared us primitive and dangerous." More representatives began sharing their stories. The Zelthari had been quarantined for developing technology that grew rather than being manufactured. The Kix had been isolated for their democratic decision-making process that included children's voices. The Rembli had been imprisoned for creating jokes that the hegemony's humor analysis computers couldn't understand. Each story revealed the same pattern, species being punished not for violence or aggression, but for being different in ways that the hegemony couldn't control or predict. Lieutenant Jung Minwoo, one of the human officers who had infiltrated deep into hegemony space, activated a holographic display that showed the true scope of the conspiracy. "The hegemony maintains control through predictability," he explained, highlighting data they had secretly gathered from alien computer systems. "Their entire civilization runs on established protocols, predetermined responses, and standardized behaviors. When a species shows true innovation, independence, or creative thinking, they're not just quarantined, they're eventually eliminated." The hologram showed star charts with thousands of systems marked in red. Each red mark represented a world that had once been home to a unique civilization. Captain Yoon Ji-hye's voice suddenly crackled over the communication system from her position, aboard the infiltrated hegemony station. "We've accessed their historical records," she reported. "The numbers are worse than we thought. Over 3,000 species have been quarantined in the past millennium." The assembly fell silent as the magnitude of this revelation hit them. "Most of those quarantined species were never heard from again," Captain Yoon continued. "The hegemony doesn't just isolate civilizations that think differently. They slowly starve them of resources, cut off their trade, and wait for them to collapse. Then they move in and claim the empty worlds. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly and to every quarantined world listening to the broadcast. The galactic utopia that the hegemony claimed to represent was actually a vast prison. Conformity wasn't just encouraged, it was enforced through isolation and ultimately extinction. Dr. Kim Jisoo looked out at the faces around her, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. "Now we know the truth," she said. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" When the quarantined species learned the truth about the hegemony's real intentions, many of them wanted to fight back with weapons and warfare. The Morthan talked about building battle fleets. The Corvani discussed organizing military strikes against hegemony installations. Even some humans suggested it was time for a galactic war, but humanity had a different idea entirely. Admiral Park Seong-hoon stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Dawn, the largest ship in humanity's growing fleet. Unlike the sleek, symmetrical vessels that the hegemony used, human ships still looked like they had been built by creative engineers who enjoyed solving puzzles. "We're not going to fight them," Admiral Park announced to his fleet commanders during their strategic meeting. "We're going to do something much more effective. We're going to ignore them completely." The plan was so simple it was brilliant, and so unusual that no galactic civilization had ever tried it before. "Establish direct trade routes with all quarantined worlds," Admiral Park ordered. "Begin terraforming operations on uninhabited star systems. File formal colonization claims through the old galactic legal framework." The beauty of the plan was that humans weren't breaking any laws. They were following laws that the hegemony had written themselves, but had forgotten about. Deep in the galactic legal code were provisions for colonizing empty worlds, establishing trade between willing civilizations, and terraforming uninhabited planets. The hegemony had never needed to use these laws because they controlled everything. But the laws were still there, gathering digital dust in legal databases. When hegemony fleets arrived to stop the human colonization efforts, something amazing happened. The humans didn't fight back. They simply packed up their equipment, politely evacuated their people, and left peacefully. But the moment the hegemony fleets departed, thinking they had solved the problem, the humans came right back and continued, exactly where they had left off. "It's like playing the galaxy's most annoying game of tag," laughed Captain Kim Byol as she watched her terraforming crew return to their worksite for the third time that week. "They chase us away, we come back. They chase us away again, we come back again." The hegemony quickly realized they couldn't station fleets at every location permanently. They simply didn't have enough ships to guard the entire galaxy against people who weren't actually fighting them. But the most brilliant part of humanity's strategy was still to come. Dr. Choi Woo-bin, the same engineer who had designed the first escape ships, now led what he called the paperwork invasion. From a hidden communication center, he began broadcasting something that no one in galactic history had ever done before. "Attention, all quarantined civilizations," Dr. Choi announced during his first galaxy-wide broadcast. "Today, we're going to teach you how to file a formal legal challenge against quarantine orders using Hegemony Law Code Section 4147. He spent the next hour explaining, step by step, how any species could use the hegemony's own legal system to challenge their imprisonment. Freedom of information, Dr. Choi declared. If they want to stop us from sharing knowledge, they'll have to ban knowledge itself. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within days, the Hegemony Council's legal department received thousands of formal challenges, appeals, and complaints. Every quarantine species began filing paperwork demanding reviews of their cases, citing obscure laws that the Council had written centuries ago and forgotten about. The humans didn't stop there. They filed contradictory legal motions, formal complaints about the quality of quarantine enforcement, and appeals that referenced galactic laws so old that the Council had to dig through archives just to understand them. Request for reclassification of quarantine status based on Hegemony Regulation 23,891 subsection C, one human filing read. also requesting investigation into discriminatory enforcement practices under Equal Species Treatment Act of Galactic Year 2847. Hegemony administrators found themselves drowning in paperwork. Every day brought thousands of new legal documents that had to be reviewed, filed, and responded to according to their own laws. The bureaucracy that had once been their tool of control was now being turned against them. But the most important result was that other species began copying humanity's methods. The Morthans started establishing their own trade routes. The Corvani began colonizing empty worlds using the same legal loopholes. The Zelthari started broadcasting their growing technology to anyone who wanted to learn. For the first time in galactic history, the hegemony faced organized disobedience that was completely legal, absolutely persistent, and utterly impossible to stop without abandoning their own governmental system. The galaxy was changing, one polite rebellion at a time. The Grand Council chamber of the hegemony had never seen anything like this emergency session. For thousands of years, this room had been a place of calm, orderly discussions, where problems were solved through established procedures and predetermined protocols. Today, it was filled with panic. Council leader Vexthon stood at the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of worlds. His normally calm demeanor had been replaced by something no one had seen before, genuine fear. "The contamination is spreading faster than we anticipated," Vexthon announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. 17 star systems have formally declared independence from hegemony authority. 43 more are openly questioning our decisions and refusing to follow standard protocols. The assembled representatives shifted nervously in their seats. These were civilizations that had followed hegemony rules for centuries, never questioning, never deviating from the established order. Now they were acting like humans. "It gets worse," Vexthon continued. "Our own member worlds are beginning to adopt human-style creative disobedience. The Altarian system has started allowing individual planets to make their own decisions instead of following central commands. The Zelkari have begun experimenting with new art forms that don't fit our classification systems." A ripple of horror went through the assembly. Art that couldn't be classified? Planets making independent decisions? This was exactly the kind of chaos that the hegemony had spent millennia preventing. "How did this happen?" demanded Councillor Rethmar. "We quarantined the humans. We isolated all the problematic species. The system was working perfectly." "The humans found a way around the quarantine," Vexthon explained. "But more importantly, they showed other species that our authority isn't absolute. They proved that civilizations can prosper without our control." From the back of the chamber, Ambassador Veltar slowly stood up. The same alien who had first contacted Earth years ago now looked older and more tired. The confidence that had once marked his species' superiority was gone. "I have a proposal," Veltar said carefully. "What if we offer humanity full membership? In the hegemony, we could give them unprecedented privileges, special treatment, anything they want. In exchange, they would stop being themselves." The chamber fell silent as the councillors considered this desperate option. "We could offer them seats on the High Council," Veltar continued. "Access to our most advanced technology. Complete autonomy for their home system. If we can't beat them, perhaps we can convince them to join us." It was a radical suggestion, but at this point, the hegemony was running out of options. The vote was close, but the proposal passed. The offer was transmitted to Earth with great ceremony and diplomatic fanfare. Never before had the hegemony offered such generous terms to any species, let alone one that had been quarantined. The response came faster than expected, and it came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kim Jisoo stood at the podium in the United Nations General Assembly Hall, but this wasn't the same room where humanity had once dreamed of joining galactic civilization. The hall had been transformed. Behind Dr. Kim Jisoo, 67 different flags flew alongside Earth's banner, each representing a former quarantine subject that had joined humanity's growing alliance. "We have received the hegemony's generous offer," Dr. Kim Jisoo said, her voice carrying to every corner of the galaxy through the new communication networks that the quarantine species had built together. We want to thank the Council for their unprecedented proposal. She paused, and for a moment hegemony leaders watching the broadcast dared to hope that their desperate gambit had worked. However, Dr. Kim Jisoo continued, "We're not interested in joining your club. We're too busy building our own." The words hit the Hegemony Council like a physical blow. They had offered humanity everything: power, technology, prestige, and the humans had simply said no. "The galaxy is big enough for everyone," Dr. Kim Jisoo continued. "We're not trying to destroy the hegemony or force anyone to change. We're simply offering an alternative. Your worlds are welcome to join us when you're ready to try something different." She gestured to the flags behind her. "These 67 civilizations have discovered that diversity isn't a threat to peace. It's the foundation of it. We've learned that cooperation works better than control, and that creativity is more powerful than conformity." The broadcast ended, leaving the Hegemony Council sitting in stunned silence. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years by offering civilizations a choice: join us or be destroyed. Now, for the first time, someone was offering their own people a third option: join us and be free. And people were choosing freedom. Within weeks, entire Hegemony member worlds began requesting information about joining the new alliance. The paradigm shift that had started with humans crashing into space stations was now reshaping the entire galaxy. The age of enforced conformity was ending. The age of voluntary cooperation had begun. 2 years had passed since Ambassador Veltar first arrived at Earth's solar system with what seemed like humanity's greatest dream: an invitation to join galactic civilization. Now, as Dr. Kim Jisoo looked out at the assembly hall on the planet Haven, she could hardly believe how much the galaxy had changed. Haven itself was proof of what could happen when different species worked together instead of being forced to conform. The planet had been completely uninhabitable just 18 months ago, a dead rock floating in space, with no atmosphere and no life. But 12 different species had combined their unique technologies to transform it into something beautiful. The Zelthari had contributed their growing technology, creating plants that could survive in any environment. The Morthan had used their artistic skills to design cities that were both functional and breathtaking. The Corvani had developed atmospheric processes that turned poisonous gases into breathable air. Humans had contributed something different: the ability to coordinate all these different approaches and make them work together, even when they seemed to contradict each other. The result was a world unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen: cities that looked like living art, forests that cleaned the air while producing food, and technology that grew and adapted instead of breaking down. Dr. Kim Jisoo, now serving as Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Cooperative, stood before an assembly that would have been impossible under the old hegemony system. Hundreds of species were represented, some in person, others as holograms, and a few as completely alien forms of communication that humans were still learning to understand. "We're not here to replace the old system with something just as rigid," Dr. Kim Jisoo addressed the diverse crowd. "We're not trying to create new rules that everyone has to follow. We're here to prove that chaos, creativity, and individual choice can coexist with peace." She gestured to the assembly around her. "Look at this room. 6 months ago, most of you had never even heard of each other. Now you're working together, sharing technologies, creating things that none of us could have built alone." From the military section of the assembly, Admiral Yoon Ji-hee stood to give her report. The former captain who had crashed into her first space station was now coordinating the cooperative's expansion efforts across the galaxy. "Former hegemony worlds are requesting cooperative membership daily," Admiral Yoon reported. "Just this week we received applications from 15 star systems. They're voluntarily abandoning their rigid protocols and choosing voluntary cooperation instead." She activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. What had once been a uniform grey representing hegemony control was now a patchwork of different colors, each representing a different approach to civilization. "The most interesting part," Admiral Yoon continued, "is that we're not having to convince anyone to join us. They're watching what we've accomplished and deciding for themselves that they want to be part of it." From the audience, a familiar figure slowly stood up. Former council member Thexvor had once been one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, helping to enforce the hegemony's control over thousands of worlds. Now he represented the reformed hegemony worlds, those parts of the old empire that had chosen to adopt the cooperative's principles. "I would like to say something," Thexvor announced, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of regret. "We spent millennia fearing what made each species unique," he said, looking directly at Dr. Kim Jisoo. "We thought that differences led to conflict. That creativity led to chaos. That individual choice led to destruction." His voice grew stronger as he continued. "Humanity taught us that we had it completely backwards. Diversity isn't a threat to civilization. It's the foundation of it. When beings are free to be themselves, to think differently, to try new approaches, they don't destroy each other. They create things that none of them could have imagined alone." The assembly erupted in applause that sounded like music, with each species contributing their own unique way of showing approval. As the session concluded, Dr. Kim Jisoo stood once more to deliver humanity's final gift to the galaxy. "We want to make something clear to every world listening to this broadcast," she announced. "The Galactic Cooperative isn't exclusive. We're not trying to build another empire. The door is always open to anyone who wants to join us." She looked directly into the camera that was broadcasting her words to every inhabited world in the galaxy. "When you're ready to be yourselves, instead of what someone else thinks you should be, we'll be here waiting for you." Outside the assembly hall, the orbital space around Haven told the real story of the galaxy's transformation. Ships from over 100 different worlds waited in peaceful formation, each vessel completely unique, each representing a different approach to space travel and engineering. Some ships looked like living creatures. Others resembled geometric art. A few appeared to be held together with spare parts and creative engineering, but they all flew together, each contributing their own strength to the growing alliance. The galaxy's greatest strength had always been what the hegemony feared most: the beautiful, chaotic, unstoppable force of billions of different beings who refused to be anything other than themselves. And it had taken humanity's stubborn refusal to follow the rules to help everyone. Else remember that being different wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a gift to be celebrated.